Welcome to Confident Growth, the podcast for people who are passionate about personal growth and productivity. Today, I'm here with my fellow LinkedIn top voice, James Cheo, and he is the Chief Investment Officer of a major bank and also one of the people whom I really look forward to reading in LinkedIn because he always comes up with very original and very engaging content. So thanks for joining us here today, James.
Well, pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's such a treat to have somebody as busy as you come in and share your wisdom with the audience. I really must thank you. I want to start off with this first quote of yours that you said, which is that nobody reads your emails. That's why you ended up on LinkedIn. Can you explain a little bit more?
Yeah, it's true because I work for a large organization.
Yes.
So, you when you send emails,
Yes.
Nowadays nobody reads your email. But somehow when you post on LinkedIn, everyone says, hey, I like that post that you do and
Yes.
things like that. So I think there is a power to kind of share what you do. But of course, I think LinkedIn could be a good way, for professionals to do that.
So how did you get started? Tell me the story of how you started posting on LinkedIn and what was your first indication that, wow, you're getting traction? Because I know you've had some super viral hits as well.
Yeah, well, originally I did LinkedIn to show my colleagues what I'm doing. So it starts very small, with just a little team in mind and something broader. Because, you can't send email to all staff in a company, right?
Yes.
Because if you speak in a conference, you cannot send it to everyone.
Right.
Yeah, so I use it as a means to communicate actually initially within my organization. So it's usually about, I try not to do any bragging or humble brag, but I try to share, an insight, something that, hey, people would know, share something that I've learned. So
Like life lessons or advice?
Correct.
Yeah.
Initially was work related. So that's for the work bit. But as it grew bigger and bigger, I started to find, hey, if I use more of the lessons that I've learned in life, it's broader, the audience gets bigger. So it started to grow from there, from a small team to beyond the teams, within the organization, outside the organization. So I think that's how my content progressed along the years.
And then did you start getting more and more like personal or not work related? Was that intentional or?
In some way, it's also related to my own maturity as I grow older.
Yes.
So when I started, I was very conscious on trying to make it professional, work related. But as, I don't know, over time, I felt, why don't I just share some personal reflection? And then, and those are the ones that do better on LinkedIn.
Can you share with me an example of one of the LinkedIn posts that you were maybe quite proud of or pleasantly surprised to see took off?
Yeah, in fact, my most viral post was actually a personal encounter during because of work, and it was related to Ratan Tata. And
oh yes,
yes, and
the
actually,
letter.
Yeah, the letter. So, I personally know him as a friend, but that was more than 20 years ago. So when I heard that he passed on, I felt that I need to share a side of him that people don't see because everyone knows he's a business magnate. He's a big guy in all ways, but they don't really know him as a person. So that's where I want to show that, at the time he was already a big guy, chairman of Tata and Sons holding group, the revenues are in the hundreds of $billion. And when he knew me, I was just starting out. I was just a junior economist, but yet he wrote a letter to thank me for just accompanying him when he's in Singapore. So it's that side of him that I felt that he treats someone who's at the highest the same, and he treats someone who's just working, starting out, also the same. And one of the best instances I remember was that I think I was accompanying him to the Istana. So I'm not, I can't really remember who he's supposed to meet, but probably someone, I think he was supposed to meet Lee Kuan Yew.
Okay.
So and before we go into the room, I could see he was nervous, because it's like, I'm going to...
Who wouldn't be?
Yeah, so he was nervous.
Yes.
So he held my hand, and, he held my hand,
Oh, wow.
And he said, wish me luck,
Oh, wow,
Yeah,
so sweet.
correct.
Wow, that would be such a meaningful memory.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I can see when he came out, he kind of, I can see he felt relief after the meeting. And then we laughed off like friends,
Yes.
Despite him being so successful, I think what came across is how he treat people equally.
Yes.
So that's why I think that post became viral because of that aspect of him
Yes.
that I want to share with the rest of the world.
I think it really touched a chord because it was showing like the human side of business. Like I feel in our industries, when in finance, for example, when I was in finance, of course, there's so much of work that is transactional, where we have to get stuff done. I have to call you because maybe the report or working on a project. But then the part that we really remember and appreciate is the human side, the relationships we form, the jokes that we tell when we are doing the late nights on deals, or during a roadshow, all the funny stuff that happens behind the scenes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's always the human side of things that we always kind of remember. And at the end of the day, we got to bring that even to the clients, because sometimes when the clients see you, they also feel, hey, you're so transactional with me.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So I've realized over time, someone that does well is someone who's able to not just bring knowledge, but to bring a connection.
Yes. So what would you say are some of the best lessons you've learned about relationship building?
I think first and foremost, the best lessons I've learned is always to, don't prejudge someone. Be open. Realize also that not everyone will be your friend.
Yeah.
Not everyone will support you.
Yes.
Some will, some will not. But ultimately, always be, always have ideas. Always share your ideas. Always be someone that draws people to you. So I think that's quite important in order to build networks, because ultimately, people want to hang out with people whom they like, right?
Yes.
Who is fun.
And who are generous.
Who are generous. You're not someone who is stingy, not someone who's negative, pessimistic, not fun to hang out with.
Yes,
so
good energy.
Good energy at the end of the day. So if you have all those qualities, chances are you'll have a bigger network than someone who doesn't do it.
And also like humble. I feel in Asian contexts, like humility or like not being full of yourself. I feel like you're very humble. Like when I meet you and, you're very down to earth. Nobody would ever think like, wow, James is a big shot, even though you are a very powerful person in the business.
I would say I learn, in many ways when I interact with a lot of people who are way, way more successful, way, way more powerful, the humility that they show. Ratan Tata is one clear. And I think there is strength in that.
Yes.
Because you need to have a certain consistency.
Yes.
What I'm consistent about is when I started working, I'll make sure I greet the auntie, the auntie who cleans clear the rubbish in office. And I still greet her, the auntie not the same auntie, but always when I see the auntie, I'll make sure I ask them, hey, auntie, 你吃饱了没有? So it's that sort of thing that you force yourself to do.
Yes.
And then you treat everyone the same. You treat the CEO the same as well.
I totally agree. Yeah. I recently wrote on LinkedIn about how I caught up with my ex-colleague. He was a few years older than me in UBS, and his name is Vineet, and he's running JP Morgan now, their banking. And when we caught up, I said to him, Vineet, I always remember the small things that you did. Like even 20 something years ago, when I was just an intern and then a fresh grad in UBS, we would have this fruit that was delivered on our desk. And we always used to joke that this fruit is supposed to be warding off scurvy for us investment bankers, because we never see the daylight, we come to work, it's dark, we leave, it's dark. So we always have the scurvy fruit. And then every week there would be this fruit delivery, and I would have this collection of rotting fruit on my desk because I never have any time to wash the fruit and whatever. So one day Vinny comes over and he's like, Crystal, why are you not eating your fruit? You're not eating your fruit. You need to eat the fruit. Then I'm like, I got no time to wash this apple. And then Vinny just gives me this look. And then he took out the bottled water and then he poured it into this napkin. And then he started like wiping my fruit from me. And this is like associate director, like at that point of time. And he still had the heart to do that, to clean my fruit, to wipe it and to give it to me and to say like, please do this. And I had so many takeaways from that. And I really said to him when we met up recently for lunch, I appreciate you for the small things. I feel like it's just like moments of humanity, like you say, the humanity that really leave a very deep impression on people. But also like brings me to another point, which is that last time when we used to work from office, and at least during my time in banking, there was a lot of humanity. Even though it's a very rough and tumble culture, the fact is that there was a lot of mentorship. In those days, like when you're an analyst that comes into banking, you were literally sitting on the floor and you have people left, right, in front, behind you. And you can always turn to the person on your right and say that, hey, look through my Excel model. Can you tell me my discount to RNAV or whatever it is? And like, just check, there's always people around you. And then you go to meetings all day and you see how your bosses and your clients, the CEOs, you see how they comport themselves. You learn these subtle cues and all of that. And why I feel today, people really struggle. And they write to me every weekend asking me about how do I do this, how social skills and all this kind of EQ, emotional intelligence stuff. I feel a lot of that is because of remote work. Yeah. And when you're in a very remote work culture, you do not have the discipline of coming to work. And you also don't have the exposure and mentorship of like a million touch points every week. It's very hard for me to distill and teach you how to be a person, how to be a human, how to be a professional, because literally you are in your own bedroom trying to virtually produce things and not being plugged into the fabric of corporate life. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean exactly. And in some ways, we start out around the same time. And
no lah, you're a lot younger than me.
About that, but so when I just started out, I told my father, he's like a Chinese tauke, run the SME kind.
Yes.
So you ask, hey, where's your office when I started out? Do you have a room?
Yes.
I said, no, in banking, we got no rooms.
Yeah.
Last time we got no rooms.
My mom also asked me,
where's your room? I said, no, we got no rooms. Ours is like a library.
Yeah.
We all sit side by side.
Yes.
But they say, hey, because banking, the pay usually is higher.
Yes.
They say, based on that pay, you need...
You don't have corner office.
No, nothing. We got no rooms. And then I explained to him why we don't have rooms is because in banking, information is key.
Yes.
Exactly what you say. That little edge we have is that information. And sometimes the information is you just getting off your next guy.
Yes.
So I think you're right. In this new world where, there's hybrid work from home, that bit of connection with to plug into a living team and it's an organism that you have to be plugged into, which is very crucial. Most of my learning over the years is not so much a mentor saying, I'll mentor you, but it's most of the time I'm watching someone I respect chair a meeting, how they take this, how they answer this difficult question.
Yes.
And it's not exactly the answer, but it's the way, the mannerism they do it, the calm that they have. And also maybe sometimes I also realize they also don't have the answer sometimes.
Yeah. Yes, I agree with you. A lot of times when people ask me like, how did you learn the things that you learn? And I realized that so much of it was being firstly curious, secondly paying attention, not being on my mobile phone during those meetings, but really like soaking up who is sitting where, how did they walk into the room, how did they make eye contact, what did they do in the room, reading the body language, so curious, being aware, but also having exposure. I think in banking, like one of the major gifts of being a banker, no matter how hard you think it is that you get a hell of a lot of exposure. You get to sit in rooms where deals are being made with titans in the world, and you get to see at the very highest level how people compose and comport themselves, how they actually speak with gravitas. And then after that, we kind of like are sponges and we soak it up. You know what I mean?
You almost like have to be like a kid, a child,
exactly.
absorbing that information in, and then always to reflect. How can you, if you're in that situation, how are you going to do it? So I think that's how that learning process is.
And I think also there's the element, I don't know whether you agree or not, about fake it till you make it. At least for me, I'm always like saying I'm the first generation in the corporate world in my family. My dad and mom, like teacher, doctor, they don't know anything about corporate world and politics and all that. So when I came in, like you said, I'm like a child. I cannot ask my mom or dad or anybody. Nobody I know went to the corporate world. So I'm literally like there, like trying to figure out how to say this, how to do this. And I think at the start, nobody knows.
Yeah.
So like it is something that we try to pick up and learn, define for ourselves the insider or the insider rules that nobody taught you.
Yeah, absolutely. Because there are certain rules that people will, there are public rules that you know.
Yes.
But the real inner
real rules,
workings
yes.
is not those things. You have to figure out yourself. And you realize power or decision making is not necessarily with the highest ranking person.
Yes.
Yeah, you realize all
Yes.
these little groups and networks that you've got to figure out yourself.
For sure.
And if you're plugged away, how would you know all these things that are actually very important?
What is your view on like return to work? Like, have you started doing that, or is everyone working full time or virtual? Or how is it?
I think it depends on the organization and the culture. Where I'm coming from, they're taking the view of a hybrid.
Yep.
So for me, I don't, as much as we see the value, I don't disagree with hybrid. Because there are different. At the end, it depends on the job scope of that person. Personally, for me, I need time to read. So sometimes being in a crowded place with so much noise, it affects me.
Yes.
So for me, I try to dedicate time to read because that's where I reflect and I strategize.
Yes.
And that's why being at home at times or being at somewhere that's quiet, whether it's 1 hour, 2 hours, I try to set aside that special time where no one can disturb me.
Right.
And I can read on something related to work or maybe sometimes something that's unrelated, which can be actually more strategic for me to think about issues. So that bit I appreciate from the hybrid side of things.
I think you are like spot on about the need to get away from the noise, because in investment, there's a reason why Warren Buffett is sitting in Omaha, right? A lot of the best investors, they're like, we don't want to be so close to the noise. We want to be far enough to have our own thoughts, our own perspective. And also the job itself sometimes requires not being influenced by whatever else is going on and having a contrarian point of view.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think we are inundated with too much noise.
For sure.
Too much noise, too much information. So sometimes I think it's important to kind of connect the dots. And it depends on different people's learning and the learning style. But for me, I like a mix. So at times, you learn from people. At times, you even listening to podcasts. At times, you read. So you want to have different ways to kind of gain that edge.
So how do you align with your team then? Like, what is the cadence where you really make sure that your team is like aligned and cohesive? Like, do you have a every morning daily stand-up meeting, or do you have a weekly? Like, what is the sort of cadence?
Well, I think the business drives that. So for us, in fact, we meet. We share the investment views every morning to the bankers.
Right.
So we try to keep everyone abreast what's happening.
That's like an 8 o'clock call.
Yes,
We used to have that too.
That sort of thing. So I'll chair those things. But those are just day-to-day movements. Where I think would be more strategic is, how do we cut out those noise and what's the real trend that's going on? What's the interpretation? I think those things you really need to reflect first, and then perhaps at times you have meetings to bounce off with the team to kind of say, hey, maybe this is a trend. Let's dig deeper, or let's see, is this really a noise, or is this something that we should pursue?
I want to double click on some of that because, my audience is quite Singaporean, and something that I notice about them is that they tend to be a little risk averse, or at least more risk averse than I expect, because I come from this very global sort of mindset. And sometimes they ask me like, how do you make risky decisions or risky calls or any kind of things that involves risk? And being in your position as chief investment officer, right, you must have had to come out and make certain ballsy, high conviction calls in your career, which maybe some people would have left criticized or things like that. How do you deal with that when you are, sticking your neck out and saying that I believe in it? What gives you the courage and conviction to do this? And how do you deal with the potential fallout, if so?
Yeah, I think investing and also career choices and decision, there are many similarities, and there are a few principles that we can kind of try to unpack. I've used some for my own career. So in order to be very gung-ho over something, right?
Yes.
You've got to first look at the history of that thing. How has it done? So for me, I built my career being a US market bull, US stock market bull.
Yes.
So I started my career about more than 20 years ago. But at that time, I look back at how the US market performed 40 years back.
Right. So you have data to substantiate.
So usually for financial markets is that if something is a trend for 40 years, in order to break that trend, you need something big. Most of the time, it's just a noise. And economic data that's slow. Those things don't really affect. The general trend will be there.
Right.
So that's how I frame up convictions or strong views on certain things.
You zoom out and you see the big picture.
How has it been? How has it behaved over the last 30, 40 years? And what shocks really brought it down? And you always question yourself when a shock comes, is this the shock that will change everything? Or is this just another little bleep? So I think that's my framework to think about investing, or to think about how you build up conviction. But I think it can also apply in your career. For example, you need to, it's very, I don't encourage to have for because you talk about risk averse, and I think there is a value of knowing risk, but you shouldn't be too scared of risk.
Shouldn't be controlled by the fear.
Shouldn't be controlled. So the only way to do that is to, always do things in bite size, like diversify small bits. Get started on it. Your idea may not be perfect. You don't need to be so gung-ho over that one idea because sometimes it might not even work. So you have many little pet projects or ideas. It can be beta projects, but test it out with your colleagues. Test it out with your seniors.
Sure.
It's a way of you even presenting that idea.
Yeah.
So, you kind of reiterate. It's a reiteration process. It's trial and error.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, we in this world where the consumers change so fast, the geopolitics change so fast, even your idea is never perfect.
For sure.
You need to have a kind of a trial and error. So I would say go bite size, diversify. And that's the way to kind of build your risk-taking, build your career in trying out different things.
Yeah, really like having that experimental mindset, that growth mindset. That's always the most fun to me, to speak to people who are like, when I speak to successful people like yourself, a lot of times they're like, oh, I'm trying this out. I'm doing this new part of my morning routine, or I'm experimenting with this new business idea, or I'm doing this little new exercise routine, or I'm listening to this, I'm learning this new skill of, making pottery or calligraphy. But I find that successful people are always experimenting, and they don't feel like everything must be success or failure. It's like, I'm doing this because the process itself is rewarding.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if you were to kind of pick one thing and go super high conviction on it can fail.
Yes.
Yeah. So once you go high conviction, you better make sure you don't fail. So it always is a build up. You don't start off with super high conviction.
You plant a lot of seeds and see what blooms.
Yeah, what blooms, and then you slowly cultivate the better ones, and then your conviction builds over time with that. I think that approach is more sensible rather than not doing anything. Like I would say, in many young people now, you're right, risk averse. They put a lot of emphasis on the risk. What if this could go wrong? So it ends up, it cripples them. They don't speak up. They don't share that idea. They keep the idea to themselves. And maybe that idea, it might not even be the killer idea, So I think it's always good to experiment, share, learn new things. And that's the way, when your senior manager or someone very senior, CEO or whoever asks you, what are you working on? You're stuck sometimes, So if you have a lot of these ideas, you've got always something very interesting to say.
And I'm wondering whether you naturally am just not affected by this sort of thing, because some people aren't, or whether there are certain lessons or learnings that you've had over time.
Yeah. negativity, it's normal. We're not perfect. We'll make mistakes along the way. So that naturally there will be a feedback loop. Is what do you do with it, and whether will you let it overrun you. For me, I always want to look at what's your ritual, what's your process. I think that's very important. And if you have a healthy enough ritual, a healthy enough process, even you get the criticism, go back to your process. Continue doing what you do because you're doing it right. There will be bad costs, but then it should not derail what you're actually doing. So I think that's the best way to overcome negative setbacks is to look back at what your process is. Basically, in a simple term, is what you do every day.
Right.
How do you research? How do you come up with that call? How do you communicate that idea and things like that? Is there something wrong in it? If there's nothing wrong, keep doing it. If there's something wrong, then yes, maybe you have to adjust that.
And is that similar to social media as well? Like, actually, I don't know whether it's happened to you because like I see most of your posts are very, very well received. I haven't ever seen any negative reaction to anything you posted, but do you have any sort of haters or comments that are not?
Yeah, I think that's why maybe I'm just on LinkedIn, because I think LinkedIn account
actually LinkedIn
very
is very
positive.
safe. Everyone is like very safe on LinkedIn, whereas on Instagram and TikTok they can be very
right. That's why I don't dare to go to uncharted areas.
So far, the reception has been unanimously positive.
99% is always quite positive because it's just LinkedIn. Because generally, LinkedIn it's a professional network, and your boss sees what you do. You won't say something too negative, and because of that, it provides a check. But if it's other platforms, it can go quite the opposite. Maybe I get less of that because I draw big boundaries when it comes to certain topics.
Yes, which is fair enough. Which is absolutely fair.
Which I encourage. Every employee should, there are guidelines in your company what you can do and cannot do on socials. But whatever guidelines, you get in trouble when you get in trouble. So the guidelines don't really help you. So what I do is always, the guidelines are here. I add big buffers so that I don't even go near the guidelines.
Yes. But then yet, sometimes people say to me like, I am a very private person. I am not, so I don't know what to share on social media. Like can you give like our audience some tips on if they are a corporate like you working in a very heavily regulated environment, what are some subjects that are safe but also interesting to speak about?
Yeah, so I would, the reason why I agreed or I want to do post on LinkedIn is because I told myself what I'm not going to post. So 2 personal things related to myself, I don't post. I don't show every of my vulnerability. I don't post those things. Political views, I don't post it. Although I have a view, I don't post those. So I try to stay out of those things. So once you stay out of those things, then you ask yourself, what can you post? And there's still a lot of things.
Yeah.
So things you learn professionally, I think you can post those things. Things that are generally uplifting, I think you can post it. Because at the end, you want to share something to encourage someone else.
Yes.
So if those general principles hold, first what you will not say, and those things that you will say are generally things that an insight that you have gained or something that you can uplift someone else. Then I think you should do it.
It sounds a bit like what you would say at a business networking event, like if it would make appropriate dinner party conversation.
Absolutely. Something that your boss sees and say, I think this is something that you say even when your boss is around. Yes, I think it's okay.
Yeah, I think absolutely. Okay, I must ask you also, you posted this thing which you alluded to before, which is perfection is a mirage. Yeah, and I thought it was very interesting because I am a recovering perfectionist. I think a lot of us are, like where we have very high standards and perhaps that's what's contributed to our success. But at some stage in life, we also have to learn what is realistic and what's not. Can you share a little bit more about this?
Don't get me wrong. When I say perfection is a mirage, I don't mean that one should, bochap or just give up or give substandard type of work. It's coming from the context, like maybe from our perspective where because we tried to be perfect when we were younger.
Yes.
And that takes a toll on you because, you overanalyze your emails, you overread what your boss is trying to think.
Yes.
You know, if your presentation just has this slight not say error, but maybe someone gave a neutral comment, then you take it so hard on yourself.
Yes.
So I think I want to get rid of those kind of feelings that that one might have, but instead, you know, to kind of think of your work as you're not trying to create something perfect at the onset. It's again that whole beta version. You know, you need to have a few. You need to diversify different little projects. Don't need to put so much effort yet, but these are still new ideas. And then how could you, through trial and error, improve that idea? And then that outcome can be better compared to, oh, this is perfect. I must make sure this set of ideas become the best product. But sometimes it doesn't work that way.
I agree. Like sometimes like people read a lot into small comments. And particularly at the start of your career, like if your boss says something small like, oh, you mean you didn't do that or whatever, sometimes it's very tempting to create this whole story about it and really let it like influence ourselves. Then keep on like bringing it up from the past and regurgitating it in our mind. But it's very important also to just let go and focus on the next thing and the how to recover from whatever it is, because we all make a million mistakes. It's all about the recovery.
Yeah, absolutely. Because sometimes we overplay the mistake in our head.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that we have to break. So I think a ritual, like maybe simple ritual, like even like drinking coffee in the morning, the smell of it, going onto your desk, continue to do what you normally do. That ritual brings you back to that process of training again.
Yes.
And you don't keep thinking about, what happened at the last meeting, what that so-and-so said.
I want to, now you reminded me, one of my favorite questions is about morning ritual. Are you somebody who has a consistent morning routine and like what does that look like to maintain your optimal performance, figure, brain, everything?
Yeah, I think I just want to, morning coffee, look out in the sun.
What time do you wake up?
Well, it varies, but around 7.
Okay.
Yeah, around maybe sometimes it's 6:30, but around 7.
Do you have an alarm clock or you wake up with the sun naturally?
No, I need an alarm clock.
Right. And how many hours of sleep do you have a day? Interrogation.
About not many. Maybe 5 hours, 6.
No,
yes,
really?
Yes.
Hey, you got no dark circles or eye bags?
I have. Yeah.
Okay. So you only get like 5.5 to 6 hours of
Yes.
sleep. You wake up at 7 and then you have your coffee.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I have to catch up on what happened in markets because by 8 to 8:30, I have to start to kind of share. So,
So like, do you meditate or like do anything like that? Or do you go straight into the news flow?
I would be, when I have my coffee, I'll just be calm a little bit. I don't really meditate, but just take that deep breath, just try and be present.
Yeah. And how does your family fit into this? Like, do they wake up at the same time or?
Different. I've got 3 kids, so my elder kids, they would be going to school. My youngest one also primary school, so they are a little bit earlier than me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how it goes.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think by the time 7 to 7:30, I'm quite alone. There's not much noise. So so it gives that little window to just be a bit quiet.
Yes.
Before you jump into what's going to happen. But
Yeah.
more or less, as I shared with you, over the years, you have a framework of how things would be.
Yes,
Most of the time,
yes.
it's just noise. So you don't need to be too worried most of the time.
So like wake up at 7 and then 7 to 8 o'clock is like compose yourself, your thoughts and everything. And then 8 o'clock is like the morning call. You're there like talking to your team like, okay, today we're going to push this or whatever it is, this idea and all that. I also wanted to ask about your mindset about investment. I know that we're not going to give like specific investment advice or anything like that, but I'm more interested in, say, your personal friends or family members who are kind of like averse to investing or maybe feel like they're not confident. Like what kind of advice do you give for people who feel like very not confident about investing, but like maybe need a little encouragement to start?
Yeah, I think most people are averse to risk. So basically, they put too much emphasis on the risk.
Yes.
So anything that's risk, they get very scared. So end up, most of the thing is you're doing nothing, basically all in cash. So
Yeah.
that's one group.
Yes.
Then there's another group who is the other way around. They are
in
crypto, anything that gives
Wall Street bets.
Yeah, It's because they've placed too much weight on the reward.
Yes.
And it's not their reward,
Interesting.
it's someone else's reward.
Yes.
Because they saw, so and so made X amount so much in such a short time. I also want to be it. So that's a
Right.
FOMO.
Yes.
Both strategies are bad
Yes.
because if you don't do anything, you miss out on growing your wealth over time. And if you take too much bets, you will lose money.
Yes.
Somehow over time, naturally, if you chase something very risky, you lose money.
Yes.
And once you lose money, you put too much emphasis on the loss.
Yes.
And then it leads to paralysis again. You won't do anything.
Yeah, so true.
So that's how most people are when it comes to their investment experience. So how I would say is that you should look at things in a more rational way. If let's say you invest in something and the first thing you wake up is to look at your investment in the morning, then I think that amount probably is too big, or the risk you take is too much. You must be able to invest in something that is probably you need to be very diversified, that you feel safe, and you will know and you've seen historically that it will grow over time, slowly, not going to be a lot, but slowly. Then I think that should be the right way to invest. So there are ways to do it. To take away all this emotion, you automate it. So X% of your savings, every month that you earn, you say, I dedicate X amount to go into this investment plan. So that's one way to automate it. Another way to automate, if you want to trade, is always to put, stop losses there. So that you know that once you hit past that, it's a wrong call.
Yeah. You are a very systemic person, James. Every time I talk to you, you keep on coming back to automate systems, your process, decision making. I can really see that you're that kind of person. You're very logical, and there's you focus on more the methodology or the process rather than just the short-term results.
Yes and no. There are
Really?
parts that I want to be creative about, and that's where I think all these posting on LinkedIn, the personal bit come about, because sometimes it's spontaneous,
okay.
and a lot got to do with how you feel that day, and also the people you meet, the reflections. So I appreciate that part of posting on LinkedIn. It's sometimes also a way of like a bit of a journaling from my perspective.
Yes, I like the ones where I think you posted something when you were working out recently and you're just like very casually dressed and it was just like very natural. And I think people need to see all sides of us. Like in the past, like you could present a certain work persona and then like be a different person in your home. But in today's world where information is everywhere, I think like we are just one person, whether we're at work or with our family or with our friends or whatever, we're starting to almost like learn how to become more ourselves or like be more intentional about how we message to everyone.
It's tough because we have so many different parts of our lives. And I think that's taking a toll on a lot of people.
Yes.
So I personally, or as we grow, become more mature, you know what's important and what's not important, you don't really care. I mean, when you're younger, you want to impress everyone.
Yeah.
Like, you want to be the smartest person in the room, say the smartest thing. But after a while, you don't care. I mean, for me.
Yes, no, I agree. So as you grow older, what do you care less about?
You care less about other people's opinion.
Yeah, agree.
I care more about my own opinion.
Yeah. Does this work for me or does it not work for me? Sort of like you raise your standards.
Yeah, correct. So that's a mindset shift. I know it's not easy. It doesn't happen all the time. Sometimes you're still worried what someone else thinks of you. But I think generally, one should care more about what they think of themselves rather than what others think.
Could you describe your leadership style?
I would say it's open. I would say usually I just set the general direction. I don't micromanage. You just get there. So that's my style. Very open and generally just set the direction. And then it's more of the results. The day-to-day, I don't want to be involved.
What happens if somebody isn't performing or you feel like do you feel like you need to control or micromanage a bit more, or if somebody's not performing or not delivering what they're supposed to, how would you handle that situation?
Yeah, because it becomes tough if someone is not performing and then you step in and start doing that job. Tough on both fronts. Number one is that person feels that you are interfering.
Yes.
And also tough because you get upset because is this why am I doing your job?
Yes.
So I would say that at the end of the day, it's very important to set milestones and guidelines of how you're going to reach that goal. But not to go in and take over, and then set the expectation. And also, at the end of the day, it's about how teams collaborate and help each other. And in certain ways, certain collaboration might help lift people up in that kind of people who are lagging behind. And what I realized for most people is that, who are not performing, it's not so much about not knowing the stuff, because not knowing you can teach very fast, or it's more of a certain feeling that they feel they are not part of it. They feel burnout. And for me, the real reason why people get burnout is because they are not playing in the first team. Because if you are not playing the first team, you can be working very hard, but your hard workingness is not contributing anything to the whole scheme of things, because you don't understand where the flow of the game is happening.
Tell me a bit. What is this first team?
You have to first know that what are the real goals of the organization,
the real KPIs, the real strategic priorities.
Real strategic, and then what you do, what your team is doing, are you part of it to enable the key strategic KPIs? Usually it's definitely got to do with customers, definitely got to add value to customers, definitely. And at the end, the revenues will show. So are you involved in that, being whichever part of the organization, are you part of that team that enables that? And you have to ask yourself day to day, if you are doing things that don't add up, you feel burnout, essentially. So I think that's where managers have to, find a way to put people into that team that contributes to what matters.
So like people have to feel that their work is meaningful and purposeful, but yet at the same time, to play devil's advocate, not everybody can work on the sexiest, most exciting projects, and sometimes there need to be maybe more, I don't know, back office people or people like who are more kind of operational. Then like how? For sure. Absolutely. It's just like a football team, right? You cannot have everyone being Lionel Messi or the strikers. If you put 11 Lionel Messi, the team also will lose, You need a goalkeeper, you need the defenders. And I think everyone has a role, but they must know that this role contributes to the whole scheme of things. Right. The issue is that they are not even playing the defensive role. They are doing things that don't actually help to defend. Got it. And you start to, instead of defending because in order for the strikers to score the goal, the strikers must know that your defense is strong and I don't need to run back to help you defend, right? Yes. But if the defense starts to cannibalize or trying to be an attacker, and don't defend, and they start to quarrel, that's where the problem is. And I think most organizations have that problem because it's exactly this issue that you raise, because some people might think I'm not doing the sexy job, and they want to do the sexy job, and then the people who are at the sales side have to step back, and so it's that lack of collaboration that becomes the issue most of the time. Yes, absolutely. I think generally with every firm, there's also certain tensions between this team and that team. It could be between risk and between sales, or within quality and manufacturing, whatever it is. There's always different factions with different rivalry. Yes. Yeah. So once they realize that everyone plays a different role, you scope the role properly, and that if
the success of the company is the success of every bit. Then I think that's what a leader is about, to bring together the right team, define the scope properly, and once a goal is scored, a win is made, celebrate with everyone that's involved. And I think that's how great companies are being formed.
Yeah, no, that was super inspiring. I just want to ask one last question, which is, what advice would you give people who are starting out their careers today?
I would say don't chase after, don't need to be perfect. But I would say keep a mindset of, starting out small, but little projects, trial and error. And then essentially to have a diversified way of looking at your career.
Spoken like a true wealth manager.
Correct. You have a diversified, because you don't know whether this will be the whatever you do, you're not sure whether it's going to be the super project. You're not sure. So you try different things. And then that's how you navigate, because the world that we are going to live in is very, very complicated.
It's very true.
Yeah. So you're never sure where one direct project will lead you. So do a few small ones, and then let that trial and error and reiteration process help you. And along the way, I think that's where you grow.
I think it's so true. There's so much to be said about diversification, whether it's the friends that you hang out with or the social circle, or whether it's the skills you learn. In fact, it's my son's 18th birthday today. So wow, I have a mother of an 18-year-old. But currently he's very obsessed with working out in his body. And he wants to be he's already finished his personal training course, and he's a PT now and all of this thing. And me being the typical naggy mom, today I was just saying to him, look, it's also really important in life to diversify. And I was giving him that example that during COVID, all of a sudden, all our public programs were cancelled. No more face-to-face events, no public speaking, no leadership training, no workshops, no nothing. But at that point of time, because Greg and I have very diverse skill sets, he immediately could pivot to therapy online, and his book was full. And immediately I pivoted to online coaching and advisory, consultancy, can be done virtually. Immediately I had something, but I was just trying to say to him that, look, nobody knows what's going to happen. The world is so VUCA, so volatile, so uncertain. And you may think that, okay, everything is I'm going to be the best PT in the world and all that. That's great. But we still need to diversify and really, be able to be a jack of all trades on one hand, and also go deep in a few skills.
Yes, I think you're right. Being adaptable in this world is extremely important. And if you're only a one-trick pony, you just hope that trick works. But it's increasingly, I think now with AI and things like that, how are we going to cope? Yeah. So your son, it's at that point of time that he has to decide his path. I remember even at 18 years old, I don't really know what I want to do. But once you might want to do something, usually your parents will disagree. And at the time, I think I wanted to do social work. My father disagreed with me.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah, but somehow, life takes a different turn, right? Because he says, you do social work, cannot drive Mercedes one. I don't even want to drive Mercedes.
Why can't you drive now?
Hey, now I really drive Mercedes. I don't know how
you
come.
see, your father was right.
Yeah, he's right.
He knew you better than you knew yourself.
He knows. So in some ways, I because I wanted to do social work for uni, so he said, no, you cannot drive Mercedes. Then I got no choice. I changed to business. So, but right now, after all these years in banking there is also a social element to it. Whether in a bank, I was surprised, now there's a focus on ESG, for example. So this is quite meaningful, purposeful things that I thought I wouldn't be able to do in a bank. And also, even on LinkedIn, that ability to share that thoughts and like what you do, right, to impact the next generation of leaders, young people. This is in some way, there's a social element to it.
You are doing social work. Right now you are. So it's still part of your DNA.
Yes.
And I still believe that who you are doesn't change your character, your intrinsic core values, but how it's expressed, it will come out in some shape or form.
Yeah.
So you may not have studied social work, but today you still are contributing to everyone and you're putting yourself out there, you're being generous, you're sharing your ideas. So you got to have it all, drive the Mercedes as well as do the social work.
Just that past Mercedes was more prestigious. Now anyone Watercolor.
No, that was amazing. Yeah. But thank you so much, James, for taking your precious time to share with our audience some of your life philosophies, life lessons, your career wisdom, investing mindset, and all of this. And we're so privileged to have you on. And is there anything else that you'd like to share with our audience, like where they can find you on LinkedIn and any other exciting projects they're working on?
Yeah, I'll be publishing a book on sustainable finance.
Wow.
Yes, a textbook.
That's incredible. Wow, when is it coming out?
I think in the next few months, 1 or 2 months, so it should be out.
What is the book about? Tell us a little bit.
It's sustainable finance, so it's largely a textbook.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining us on Comfort and Growth, the podcast for people who are passionate about personal growth and also personal finance and also productivity. We're so thrilled and happy and honored to have James with us today. And we'll drop in the show notes everywhere you can find him. And please follow him on LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, he is really one of the most insightful and entertaining people to follow. So until next time, see you. Bye.